I'll start once I get the indication. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Smolensky, and I lead the user experience research team. I'm looking forward to answering your questions about our team, the work we recently completed, and the projects we're currently working on now. So I will ask the first person to verbalize their question. Looks like at the moment I don't see any, but we're going to wait till at least there's one question.
I have a suggestion for starting these calls. Maybe it's easiest if we stick to the script in the handbook, which is like, hey, just look until you see the live icon of YouTube, and that way we can start like within seconds. Otherwise, it's tough if people see videos and the first 10, 20 seconds are silent. We might have a big drop off in the number of views.
Great feedback. Thank you.
I'll ask a question since nobody else is.
I was just about to call on you, Christy. And you have like a bag full of questions.
Of course, always. And Catherine, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You are our resident subject matter expert in terms of navigation in our product. You have done literally years of research on our navigation. You have active research going on right now around navigation. It's so important. I would love to hear you talk about some of the most important and surprising, maybe, things that you have learned in your recent round of research.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy. I would say that the most important things that I've learned, and you can find them in the slide deck, would be the challenges around what we think of as intuitive in terms of terminology and grouping versus how people outside of the company or even people who are just not as familiar with DevOps, the life cycle, how it doesn't always resonate with them. So certain things around operations and analytics and the way that our settings are set up, they make sense within the structure of how our stage groups are split up and how we kind of think about things like GitLab, but it can be a little bit harder for users to anticipate what's underneath those categories because some of the terms are so broad or they can apply to other contexts like operations. So that was one of the things that I found most important and why it's important to test all of these ideas and the terminology that we're using with our users to kind of get a sense check of, okay, this makes sense internally, but does this also make sense to you? So that was one thing that I found very important. Something that I found very interesting, just because I personally hadn't been as close to the analytics work just in general by nature of working in Create, I found it interesting to see how many people were going to analytics insights versus other areas of the analytics section. So for example, in the project level or the group level, our analytics are split into different categories such as code review, issue, merge request, etc. But when you think about the information that actually lives within each category, it's more specific, like code coverage statistics or deployment frequency graph. So when you give users the task to find those things, the structure kind of gets complicated. A lot of people think to just go to insights because it's like a general, I want to learn something about my project, let me go to analytics insights, versus I want to know about throughput, let me go to analytics merge requests. So that was something that I found very interesting. Just like when you get into the actual task that someone is trying to do, we have some areas that are very broad versus specific, and it can be hard for users to anticipate where they should go. So I will stop there as like my first landing of information, but I would say those are the most interesting things that I've learned so far.
Yeah, I know you could probably talk about this for hours, but I'll ask you one quick tactical follow-up question.
Sure.
One of the really cool things I like that y'all are doing is doing research to set a baseline for findability so that as we make changes in the future, we can make sure that they are positive changes and not having a negative impact on our navigation. It was super interesting to me to see how low some of our findability scores were. I mean, there were findability scores that were like 15 and 19%. What would we consider to be a good baseline for findability?
So this is a great question. And so to get into some of the context, so we use a method called tree testing for the left navigation. And so this is where you're taking a close look at the actual menu structure in the IA. So you're stripping out the icons and other visual indicators. They don't have search, they can't go to docs. So it's very zoomed in on the actual structure. So that is one thing to keep in mind, that we're not expecting it to be 100% success, because in real life, they would have those other cues that could help them out. But in general, we're hoping to see at least around, I would say above 70% would be great, but in a tree test, above 60% is usually expected, because without those visual cues and things, success rate is expected to be lower than real life. But also, you want to know that at least the vast majority of people are able to complete these tasks successfully in order to feel confident that the structure as a whole is working well. But then there are also hotspots. So sometimes the overall success rate is brought down by specific areas. So what we found is that things like merge requests, wiki, CI/CD, it was very easy for users to find those things. The rate was also very direct. They got there in a short amount of time. They were able to find that information. But when it came to things like settings and operations and analytics, that's where the success rates were a lot lower. So they brought down the overall average quite a bit. So I would say in general, we're looking for above 60% in terms of the overall, but we also want to dramatically increase those really low ones. So that's why we have follow-up initiatives to focus on the areas that were lowest.
Thank you. That was really clarifying. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Catherine.
This is really interesting and timely, because we're doing a navigation redesign project on the marketing site as well, and doing the exact same testing methodology with tree testing through Optimal Workshop and some usertesting.com testing as well. And I just would love to get your opinion with no research. It's always fun to ask a researcher to give an opinion with no research. Like this confusion in terminology once the prospect has become a customer. What are your thoughts on, like, do you think they're bringing that in from being a prospect?
So to clarify, do I think they're bringing the confusion in?
Yeah, like they're bringing that mental model in. They're not forming it through the use of our product. Like it's an established sort of, their understanding is not meeting our structure. Right.
Okay. So how I would describe it is that in general, the day-to-day user of GitLab, and perhaps even the higher level and the buyer personas, but the day-to-day user is also using other tools, often like GitHub or Jira and competitors in our space. So they have all these experiences that are building up how they expect a development software tool to work. And so sometimes in areas like merge requests, issues, wiki, things that are very common across all these competitors, that makes sense to them and that maps very easily. But because so many of our day-to-day users are engineers who may or may not be involved with the DevOps side, with the ops side of things, it can become a bit more challenging for them. And that's where a lot of the variation starts to come in. So a lot of people understand terms around monitoring, for example. but operations is a bigger grab bag and a bigger concept that means different things to people, is one way I would put it. So I don't necessarily think it's a challenge or a problem in our marketing per se, but they are coming in with their own expectations based off of their own life experience and the other tools they're using and things like that. So trying to meet them in the middle, where we do want to be able to establish a brand and our own company goals and expectations, but we also want to anticipate how they might interpret those terms with their own context. So we're almost trying to meet them in the middle and not.
That's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
I would love to connect. Jessica Halloran on my team is the one who's leading that work. I think connecting you both, maybe we can create that kind of education journey where it's like they have their understanding and their terminology, and through what we design and deliver to them, as we pass them through marketing into the product, we're kind of almost onboarding them in language, so to speak.
Yeah, that's one way to think about it, because I do think we're within our right as a company to have our set of terminology, but it would be very helpful to make it easy for them to learn what we mean. So if we do kind of go against the grain in some areas, then make it easy for them to figure out how without having to say, go to Docs or go to Google to find out. So yeah, I would love to connect with you on
Great.
that.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts. It's super helpful.
You're welcome.
And Christy, looks like you just added a little note there.
Oh, yeah. I probably should have put read only, but basically
Okay.
anything we learn, we are happy to share with you and your team. Michael, please let us know what we can do to collaborate with you.
Likewise,
Yes,
thank you.
+1 on that for sure. Yeah. Sid, looks like you have the next question.
Yeah, are we testing any big changes for 14.0, which will be an opportunity for breaking changes?
So I will say, as a preview, because a lot of things are ongoing, so I won't say anything is set in stone, although there are 2 streams of work that you can think of. There is currently an ongoing initiative around the top navigation. So there is an effort to consolidate I feel like I should share my screen, but I'll just keep going for now, to consolidate the menus in the top navigation. So right now there's projects, groups, and more. And what the team is currently working on is consolidating those so that you have one point where you enter a menu and you can discover the other items that are now tucked away under more. So that's one improvement that's currently being implemented and set. I actually believe that one is set for 14.0, and we're going to work on a blog post to explain the rationale behind the change and how it all works. So that's one stream. The left navigation is still kind of undergoing some more extensive research, because basically there are some iterative improvements that have come out at this stage where we want to break down operations, for example, into, I believe the categories would be infrastructure, deployments, but then what's left is operations. So another idea that we have is infrastructure deployments and monitoring. So we're kind of testing some of those concepts right now, but then we also have an ongoing research initiative to see if we could go a bit more aggressive in terms of how we're grouping the items and go for something that's more related to buckets by task. So because we have the problem of having a lot of items in the left navigation that aren't in the most cohesive flow that they could be, we have some things that are kind of following the DevOps lifecycle, but other things that are a bit out of place. We're trying to see whether we can group some of those items in a more cohesive way. So that might be a bigger change coming in 14.0, but that's still under exploration. But the one that's planned for sure is the top nav bar consolidation.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks for that.
I may have lost you along the way, so if there are any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll also leave links in the agenda.
It's a really big deal. I mean, changing navigation is like,
Yeah.
it is as impactful and as risky as it could possibly be. So all of this exploration is absolutely the right thing to do. I've been following these issues really closely. I'm so excited about the changes that we're making. The top nav, getting rid of more. Oh, it just makes my heart happy. I jokingly call the more menu our junk drawer. It's that one drawer you have in your house where you just like stick like Scotch tape and pens and weird stuff because you have no place else to put it. And that's our more menu right now. So big good
I
change.
totally agree. And I also have 6, 7, and 8, but Lauren is in between with volunteering.
Yeah, is there, can GitLab employees volunteer to take a research survey or experiment? I haven't read the handbook page, so maybe I should go there first.
Yeah, so yes, we often do recruit internally for studies. It really depends on the kind of persona or skill set that we're looking for. Typically, we might reach out to Slack channels and ask for volunteers. That's typically how we do it, if I recall. And my team can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah. So that's one way. And it looks like you have another question in there too, or where do we submit thoughts to your groups, right?
Oh, yeah. And I would assume that's on the handbook page that I should read.
Well, not necessarily. So if I don't really know what you mean by thoughts there, but a lot.
Issues. Like if we have an opinion about maybe this organization of some module, where would we submit an issue, I guess?
Yeah, so a lot of people do share thoughts like that within the UX research Slack channel. Sometimes it starts there. Sometimes an issue is created. It starts there. Or sometimes people work with a product team on a specific issue. Like if it happens to be within the merge request experience, they may reach out to that team first, and then the research might get kicked off that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sid, looks like you got the next 3.
Yeah, I totally agree that the top navigation is a big improvement. I've been staring now for 2 years at the project navigation, and I'm not seeing the rate of improvement that I would expect there. For example, settings general feels like a grab bag of items that includes both project settings and repository merge request settings, and it's not been split up. Number 7 in the main menu, the order is repository, issues, merge request. Feels to me that issues come first in the DevOps lifecycle, and that repository and merge requests are related and should be grouped together. And I don't see many changes in that product menu. I think we have a lot of things that are outdated, and we can move more to the project lifecycle. But all this is maybe more for kind of our designers and product managers than research. So would be the right thing to do is talk with Eric Struter, our PM for navigation.
Yeah, I would say talking with our PM is a great idea. And basically, a lot of things that you're bringing up right now are where we're currently going in terms of research. So for example, I need to find the issue, but there is an issue about moving merge requests, the settings that are currently under general into its own item, or I believe into its own item right now. Although I think as we explore the categorization deeper, we might be able to combine some areas in terms of things that are related to a shared workflow. So what I would say is that, yeah, in general, there has not been a lot of movement in terms of improving the left nav, but that's where we're at currently. And that's where we're doing the research and where we're trying to make more aggressive changes, hopefully in 14.0, but along the way.
Yeah, we're not on track to make these changes in 14.0, right? right now?
So I would say I'm not 100% sure because we might have the structure in place, but I'm not sure in terms of the engineering rollout. But so I won't say we are. I'll go with
Okay.
we're not for now.
Is there like a mock-up of how it should look in 14.0?
Not yet.
Okay. How are we testing it if we don't have a mock-up of it?
So right now, since a lot of it is related to the structure of the information, we're using the true testing method. So what we do is we have basically a structure that maps out how all the items
Oh, cool.
relate to each
Okay,
other.
that's
in
what
the navigation.
what you call a tree. I call the mock-up, even though it's probably not a mock-up because it's not a design. But where can I find this new tree?
I see. Okay, I will think of the best way to format it, and then I will share it with you, because it's in our research tool. It's not like an image. It's a structure that people can click around with in our research tool. So
Okay,
I will.
I can click around.
Okay.
And Sid, we do have mock-ups and videos that have been recorded talking about all of this stuff that we're doing. Let me get that into a consolidated thing for you, and I'll get it over to you so you can go through it as you have
Yeah, I
time.
basically want to see kind of menu fixed, like all these outdated stuff. I'm sure, judging by 4.8.4.3, like all these problems are known, and we're trying to fix them. And I'd love to see something pretty ambitious for 14.0.
Yeah, and from talking to Marcel Van Rimmerdon, who's the product design manager over this, it sounds like a lot of these will happen over the next 3 milestones. So you'll start to see things dropping hopefully in 14.0 and then 14.1, 14.2. But I'll get an update over to you. I understand why you're interested in this. I am too.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a giant engineering effort. So I wonder whether we can just do a big drop in 14.0 instead of doing it iteratively, acknowledging that iteration is one of our important values, but also I think there's a lot of things that just are kind of no-brainers and we shouldn't delay. Cool. Thanks, Chrissy. So you'll drop that in the CEO channel? Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, all. We have 2 minutes remaining.
Great, thank you. And we have one more question from Michael K.
Yeah, thank you. I really like that we're formalizing the process for strategic research on slide 17. I'm personally curious to understand more about the switcher experience for people that are migrating to GitLab. And I'm wondering, do we have any previous research related to that area, or should I follow that process to request some strategic research in this area? Great
question. Yeah, so to me, that may fall under growth, which our researcher is Jeff. He is on PTO right now, so he's not here to speak to this. But I would strongly recommend reaching out to Jeff. To me, this does fall under strategic research in that area because it's looking very deeply at that new experience around when a company or an individual switch over. And there's a lot that we can learn there for sure. So
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
I work closely with Jeff already, so I'll just connect
Awesome.
with him when he's back from vacation and get that moving.
Perfect.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah. Great questions, everybody. Thank you so much. We are right on time. Perfect. I will talk to everyone next time. So thanks a lot.